The blisters on Willa Ramsey's feet had stopped hurting 2 days ago, which she knew was a bad sign. She sat against the sun-bleached wooden wall of what had once been a trading post. Her younger sister Wendy collapsed beside her, both of them too weak now to even cry. The Nebraska plains stretched endlessly before them, golden grass rippling under the merciless August sun of 1878, and Willa thought distantly that this was probably where they would die. 5 days had passed since they had eaten anything more than a handful of berries that had made them both violently ill. Their father had succumbed to cholera 3 weeks earlier on the wagon train, and their mother had followed him within days. The wagon master had been sympathetic but firm when the money ran out. He could not feed 2 orphaned girls on charity, not when his own supplies were running dangerously low. They had been left in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, with assurances that someone would help them, that the town would take them in. But Scottsbluff was barely a town at all, just a handful of buildings clustered around the North Platte River, where wagons stopped to rest and resupply before continuing west. No one had work for 2 girls with no skills beyond basic housekeeping. No one had room for 2 more mouths to feed. The few coins they had managed to scrape together had bought them 2 days in a boarding house and 1 proper meal. After that, they had tried begging, but most of the people passing through were pioneers themselves, struggling to make their own way west. Willa looked down at her sister, just 18 years old to Willa's 22. Wendy's dark hair was matted with dust, her lips cracked and bleeding. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Willa wanted to tell her it would be all right, wanted to promise that help was coming, but she had no more lies left in her. She reached for Wendy's hand and held it, feeling the delicate bones beneath papery skin. The sun climbed higher, brutal and unforgiving. Willa's vision swam, dark spots dancing at the edges. She thought of their childhood home in Missouri, the apple orchard behind their house, her mother's laugh, her father's strong hands lifting her onto his shoulders. All of it felt like someone else's life now, something that had happened to different people in a different world, hoofbeats on the hard, packed earth. Willa barely registered them. Horses and wagons passed by constantly. No one ever stopped anymore. She had learned not to hope. But these hoofbeats slowed, stopped. Jesus Christ. The voice was male, deep and rough with shock. Willa tried to open her eyes, but the sun was too bright, turning everything into white fire. A shadow fell across her face, bringing blessed coolness. "Can you hear me?" The voice was closer now, urgent. "Miss, can you hear me?" Willa managed a small nod. Strong hands touched her face, tilted her chin up. She forced her eyes open and saw a man crouched before her, backlit by the sun. She could not make out his features clearly, but she could see the concern etched in his posture. "When did you last eat?" he asked. Willa's throat was too dry to speak. She held up 5 fingers, weak and trembling. 5 days. The shock in his voice would have been funny if everything were not so terrible. "And water," she managed to croak out a single word. "Yesterday." The man straightened up, and Willa heard him moving, heard the creak of saddle leather, the splash of liquid. Then he was back, pressing a canteen to her lips. "Slow," he said. "Just a little at a time or you will make yourself sick." The water was warm from the sun, but it tasted like salvation. Willa took small sips, feeling life flood back into her body with each swallow. After a few moments, the man gently pulled the canteen away and moved to Wendy. "Hey there," he said softly. "Come on now, wake up. You need to drink something." Wendy's eyes fluttered open. She stared at the stranger with confusion and fear. "It is all right," Willa managed to say, her voice stronger now. "He is helping us." The man helped Wendy drink, patient and careful, then sat back on his heels and looked at them both. Willa could see him clearly now. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days' worth of stubble on his jaw. His face was deeply tanned, with lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. He wore dusty trail clothes and a battered hat hung down his back from a cord around his neck. But it was his eyes that struck her most, a clear light brown that held both hardness and unexpected kindness. "How did you end up like this?" he asked. Willa told him, the words coming haltingly at first, then faster. The cholera, their parents' deaths, being left behind, the desperate, unsuccessful search for work or charity. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer. "No other family?" he asked when she finished. "None that we know of. Our parents came from back east, from families that disowned them for marrying against their wishes. We have no one." The man was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the horizon. Then he stood up decisively and looked down at them. "Pack up," he said. "You are with me." Willa stared at him. "What? Pack up whatever you have got. You are coming with me." "We cannot," Willa said weakly. "We have no money to pay you. We cannot. Did I ask for money?" His voice was firm but not unkind. "You will die out here. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but soon. I have a ranch about 20 miles north. I need help running it. You need food and shelter. Seems like we can help each other." "We know nothing about ranching," Willa protested. "You know how to cook, clean, mend clothes, care for chickens." "Yes, but then you know enough. Rest of it can be learned." He held out his hand to her. "My name is Nathan Irving. I am not a bad man, and I give you my word I will not hurt you. But you need to decide now because I have already lost half a day's travel time." Willa looked at Wendy, who looked back at her with desperate hope in her eyes. They had no choice, really. It was accept this stranger's help or die in the dirt. She reached up and took his hand. "Willa Ramsey, this is my sister Wendy." His grip was strong and calloused as he pulled her to her feet. She swayed, dizzy, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Wendy tried to stand on her own, but her legs gave out. Without hesitation, Nathan scooped her up like she weighed nothing. "You can ride," he said to Willa, nodding toward a big bay horse standing patiently nearby. "Your sister can ride with me on the pack horse. We will go slow." "I have never ridden a horse," Willa admitted. "First time for everything. Come on." Getting Willa onto the bay was an awkward, painful process. Her legs screamed in protest as she straddled the animal, every muscle stiff from days of sitting in the sun. Nathan settled Wendy in front of him on a sturdy gray horse that had been carrying supplies, then swung himself up behind her with easy grace. "Just hold onto the saddle horn," he told Willa. "She is a gentle mare. She will follow us. You just stay on." They started north at a walk, Nathan leading the way with Wendy cradled against him, Willa following behind on the bay. Every step sent jolts of pain through Willa's body, but she gritted her teeth and held on. She would not complain. This man had saved their lives. The least she could do was endure a little discomfort. After about an hour, Nathan called a halt near a small creek. He helped both sisters down and spread a blanket in the shade of a cottonwood tree. "Rest here," he said. "I am going to make some food, but you both need to eat slow. Your stomachs have shrunk. Too much too fast will make you sick." He built a small fire and heated beans from a can, mixed with some dried beef and hardtack he softened in water. The smell made Willa's mouth water so intensely it hurt. When he handed her a tin plate with a small portion, she wanted to fall on it like a starving animal, but she remembered his warning and forced herself to eat slowly, taking small bites, chewing carefully. Beside her, Wendy was doing the same, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Nathan nodded, uncomfortable with the gratitude, and turned his attention to his own meal. They ate in silence, the only sounds the crackling fire and the gentle burble of the creek. When they finished, Nathan produced a bar of soap and handed it to Willa. "Creek is clean here. You both should wash up if you feel up to it. Take your time. I will see to the horses and keep watch." He moved away, giving them privacy. Willa and Wendy looked at each other, then at the clear flowing water. Without another word, they moved to the creek. The water was shockingly cold but wonderful, washing away days of grime and despair. They scrubbed their faces and hands, their arms and necks, working the soap through their tangled hair. By the time they finished, shivering but clean, they both felt more human. Nathan had his back turned when they emerged, busy checking the horses' hooves. Willa noticed he had laid out 2 blankets on the ground. "You should both sleep for a while," he said without looking at them. "It is going to be a long ride and you need rest more than you need to keep moving." "What about you?" Willa asked. "I will keep watch. Sleep." Willa wanted to argue, wanted to say they should not delay him further, but exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She and Wendy lay down on the blankets, and within moments both were asleep. When Willa woke, the sun had moved significantly across the sky. She sat up, momentarily disoriented, then remembered everything. Nathan was sitting with his back against a tree, his hat tilted forward over his face, but she could tell he was not asleep. He was too still, too alert. "How long did we sleep?" she asked. "Couple hours. You needed it." He straightened, pushing his hat back. "How do you feel?" "Better. Sore, but better. Good. We should get moving. I want to make it home before dark if we can." Wendy woke as they were packing up, and Nathan gave them both more water and some strips of dried meat to chew on as they rode. The afternoon stretched long and hot as they continued north, following trails that only Nathan seemed to see through the endless grass. Willa's legs ached from riding, her back screamed in protest, but she kept going, kept following this stranger who had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had stopped believing would be heard. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Nathan pointed ahead. "There," he said. "Home." Willa looked and saw a cluster of buildings in the distance, small against the vast landscape. As they drew closer, she could make out a house, a barn, a few outbuildings, all surrounded by rail fencing. It was modest, rough-hewn from local timber, but it looked solid and well-maintained. Beyond the buildings, she could see cattle grazing, maybe 30 or 40 head. They rode into the yard as twilight deepened, and Nathan dismounted, then helped Wendy and Willa down. A dog came bounding out of the barn, a medium-sized mongrel with a graying muzzle who danced around Nathan's feet in joyous greeting. "This is Scout," Nathan said, rubbing the dog's ears. "He is harmless. Lazy, but harmless." The dog immediately went to investigate the sisters, sniffing thoroughly before deciding they were acceptable and wagging his tail. Nathan led them toward the house, a single-story structure with a covered porch. Inside, it was simple but clean. The main room held a table and chairs, a stone fireplace, some shelves with supplies. 2 doors led off to what Willa assumed were bedrooms. "You two can share that room," Nathan said, pointing to the left door. "I will take the other. It is not much, but it is dry and the roof does not leak. I will get you some blankets." He disappeared into the other room and returned with an armload of quilts and wool blankets. "These should keep you warm. Nights get cold out here, even in summer. I will make dinner in a bit. Right now, I need to see to the horses." After he left, Willa and Wendy entered their new room. It held a bed big enough for both of them, a simple dresser, and a washstand with a basin and pitcher. A small window looked out over the prairie. It was sparse but blessedly clean, and the bed looked more comfortable than anything they had slept on in weeks. "Can we trust him?" Wendy whispered. "I do not know," Willa admitted, "but I think we have to. We have no other choice. He seems kind, he does, but we need to be careful." We do not know anything about him." They heard Nathan return, heard him moving around the main room, the clank of pots, the crackle of a fire being built in the stove. After a while, the smell of cooking meat and coffee filled the air. Willa's stomach growled despite the food she had eaten earlier. "Come eat," Nathan called. They emerged to find the table set with 3 plates and cups. Nathan had made a simple meal of fried salt pork, beans, and fresh biscuits that looked somewhat lopsided but smelled heavenly. He poured coffee for all of them and sat down. "It is not fancy," he said, "but it is filling." They ate together as darkness fell outside. Nathan was quiet, not pushing conversation, but Willa found herself curious about this man who had saved them. "How long have you had this ranch?" she asked. "About 3 years. Bought the land from a homesteader who gave up and went back east. He had started the house and barn but not finished much else. I have been building it up since." "By yourself?" "Mostly. Sometimes I hire hands during roundup or branding, but day to day it is just me. Was just me." He glanced at them. "I know this is not what either of you expected when you came west with your family. I know it is not easy being dependent on the charity of a stranger. But I am not doing this purely out of kindness. I really do need help. This place is too much for one person. Having 2 extra pairs of hands, even inexperienced ones, will make a real difference." "What would you want us to do?" Willa asked. "Cooking, mostly, and keeping the house. I have been living like a bachelor too long, eating out of cans and letting things get dusty. Beyond that, there are chickens that need tending, a vegetable garden that has gotten away from me, fences that need mending. I can teach you what you need to know about the rest. You do not have to work with the cattle if you do not want to, but I will not stop you if you want to learn. And in exchange, room, board, safety. A place to live for as long as you need it." It seemed too good to be true, which made Willa nervous. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for strangers?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "I had a sister," he said finally. "Younger than me, like you two. She died of fever when I was 17. I was away working at her ranch, and by the time I got back, she was already buried. I always wondered if I had been there, if I could have done something, saved her somehow." He looked up at them. "I could not save her, but I can save you. Seems like the right thing to do." The raw honesty in his voice cut through Willa's defenses. She saw the old grief in his eyes, the regret that still lived there after all these years. This was not a man with ulterior motives. This was a man trying to make peace with his past. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for giving us a chance." He nodded, looking uncomfortable again, and stood to clear the dishes. "You two should get some real sleep. Tomorrow we can start figuring out how this is going to work. But tonight, just rest. You are safe here." Willa and Wendy retreated to their room, closing the door behind them. They changed into the spare clothes Nathan had found for them, shirts and pants that were far too big but clean and soft from washing. The bed was as comfortable as it had looked, the quilts warm and heavy. "He is a good man," Wendy whispered in the darkness. "I think he is," Willa agreed. "I think we were very lucky. Do you think we could really stay here, make a life here? I do not know, but I think we should try. We have nowhere else to go." They fell asleep to the unfamiliar sounds of the prairie at night, the wind through the grass, the distant lowing of cattle, the reassuring presence of another human being nearby who did not want to hurt them or turn them away. For the first time in weeks, Willa felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. The next morning, Willa woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and thin sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment, she could not remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The ranch. Nathan. Being saved. She sat up carefully, feeling the deep ache in every muscle, the result of 5 days of near starvation followed by a long ride on horseback. Beside her, Wendy still slept, her face peaceful in a way it had not been in weeks. Willa rose quietly and dressed, then made her way into the main room. Nathan was already up, standing at the stove with his back to her, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filling the air. "Morning," he said without turning around. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in a long time," Willa admitted. "Can I help?" "Sure. There are plates in that cupboard there, coffee cups too." They worked together in companionable silence, setting the table, dishing up food. Wendy emerged a few minutes later, rubbing sleep from her eyes, and they all sat down to eat. "I figure we should start easy today," Nathan said. "You both are still recovering. Willa, if you feel up to it, maybe you could take stock of the house, see what needs doing, what supplies we might need." "Wendy, there are about a dozen chickens in the coop behind the barn. They need feeding and their eggs collecting. I can show you both what is what, then I need to ride out and check on the cattle. I should be back by early afternoon." It felt strange to have structure again, tasks and purpose. Willa found herself nodding, eager to be useful, to earn her place here. After breakfast, Nathan gave them a tour of the property. The chicken coop was well built but needed cleaning. The vegetable garden was indeed overgrown, weeds choking out what might have been squash and beans and tomatoes. The barn was sturdy, housing 2 milk cows along with the horses, and there was a smokehouse and a root cellar dug into a small hill behind the house. "It is a lot," Nathan said, sounding almost apologetic. "I have been focused on the herd, making sure they thrive so I can sell them and keep this place going. Everything else has sort of fallen by the wayside." "We can manage," Willa said with more confidence than she felt. "It will just take time." Nathan showed Wendy how to scatter feed for the chickens, how to check the nesting boxes for eggs. He showed Willa where he kept supplies, what they had plenty of, and what they were running low on. Then he saddled his horse and rode out, Scout trotting along behind him, leaving the sisters alone. They looked at each other. "Where do we even start?" Wendy asked. "The house," Willa decided. "Let us make sure where we are living is clean and organized, then we can tackle the rest." They spent the morning cleaning, sweeping floors and washing windows, beating dust out of the quilts and organizing the supplies in the cupboards. It felt good to work, to move, to be useful. Willa found herself taking inventory in her head, noting they were low on flour and sugar, that the coffee tin was nearly empty, that the needles and thread in Nathan's mending basket were tangled and rusty. When Nathan returned in the early afternoon, the house looked transformed. Every surface gleamed, the floors were swept clean, the windows sparkled, and Willa had managed to put together a lunch of bread and cheese and dried apples. Nathan stopped in the doorway and stared. "I had forgotten it could look like this," he said, something like wonder in his voice. "It is just a start," Willa said. "We will need to go into town for supplies soon. You are running low on quite a few things. Make a list. We can go in a few days once you are both feeling stronger." The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Nathan rose before dawn and worked with the cattle, mending fences, checking for signs of illness or injury, moving the herd to better grazing. Willa and Wendy worked on the house and the immediate surroundings, cleaning the chicken coop, wrestling the garden back into some semblance of order, cooking meals that became increasingly elaborate as they discovered what supplies Nathan had and what they could do with them. Slowly, they all began to relax around each other. Nathan was a quiet man, not given to long conversations, but Willa learned to read his moods, to tell when he was tired or worried or quietly pleased with something. He had a dry sense of humor that occasionally emerged, usually when least expected, making both sisters laugh. Wendy seemed to blossom with each passing day, regaining weight and color, her natural cheerfulness reasserting itself. She took to ranch life with surprising enthusiasm, badgering Nathan to teach her about the cattle, to let her try riding, to show her how things worked. Nathan was patient with her, answering her endless questions, showing her how to handle a lasso, how to read the brands that marked the cattle as his. Willa found herself watching Nathan more than she probably should. She noticed how gentle he was with the animals, how carefully he moved around the skittish yearlings, how he always checked to make sure the barn cat had food and water. She noticed the way he pushed himself, working from before dawn until after dusk, and how he never complained about the work or the isolation or the hardness of this life he had chosen. She noticed, too, the way he sometimes looked at her when he thought she was not watching, something in his eyes that made her heart beat faster. A week after they arrived, Nathan announced they would make the trip to Scottsbluff for supplies. They hitched the wagon, a rickety thing that Nathan admitted he rarely used but kept maintained, and set out early in the morning. The ride took most of the morning, and Willa found herself oddly nervous about returning to the town where she and Wendy had nearly died. But entering Scottsbluff with Nathan beside them was a completely different experience than being there alone and desperate. People nodded to Nathan as they passed, clearly knowing him, and he introduced Willa and Wendy as his new housekeepers to anyone who asked. If anyone remembered two starving girls begging in the street, they did not say anything. They spent the afternoon buying supplies, loading the wagon with sacks of flour and cornmeal, coffee and sugar and salt, fabric for dresses and thread for mending, seeds for the garden and medicine for the animals. Nathan did not question anything Willa added to their pile, just paid for it all from a leather pouch of coins he kept in his pocket. As they were loading the last of the supplies, a man approached Nathan. He was older, maybe 50, with silver hair and a well-tailored suit that marked him as someone with money. "Irving," the man said, "heard you hired yourself some help." "Word travels fast," Nathan replied, his tone neutral but not unfriendly. "Always does. Wanted to remind you my offer still stands. I will give you a fair price for your land and herd, save you the trouble of trying to make a go of it out there by yourself. I am not by myself anymore, Mr. Patterson, and I am not interested in selling." Patterson's eyes flicked to Willa and Wendy, calculation in his gaze. Pretty young things to be stuck out on a ranch. They know what they are getting into. "They are not stuck anywhere," Nathan said, his voice hardening. "They are working for me, same as any hired hands. And what we do on my land is none of your concern." Patterson held up his hands. "Just looking out for you, Irving. No offense meant, but the offer stands. You change your mind, you know where to find me." He tipped his hat to the sisters and walked away. Nathan watched him go, jaw tight. "Who was that?" Willa asked. "William Patterson. Owns most of the land between here and my place. Been trying to buy me out since I settled there. He wants to control all the water access in the area, and my land has one of the best creek crossings for miles. Will you sell to him?" Nathan shook his head firmly. "Not a chance. That land is mine. I built that place from nothing. I will die before I give it up to someone like Patterson." The vehemence in his voice surprised Willa, but she understood it. The ranch was not just property to Nathan. It was his dream, his purpose, the life he had built for himself. She found herself hoping they could help him keep it, that their presence would make enough of a difference to make his dream sustainable. They made the trip back to the ranch as evening approached, the wagon heavy with supplies. Willa sat on the bench seat next to Nathan, Wendy behind them in the wagon bed, and watched the sun sink toward the horizon. The light turned everything golden, the grass rippling like an ocean, and Willa felt something she had not felt in a long time. Peace. Maybe even something like happiness. "Thank you," she said quietly so only Nathan could hear, "for everything you have done for us." "You have earned it," Nathan replied. "Place has never looked better, food has never tasted better. You have more than held up your end of the bargain. Still, you saved our lives." "I will never forget that." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "You are easy people to save," he said finally. "You work hard, you do not complain. You are grateful for what you have got. That is rare. We know how close we came to dying. It makes you appreciate the small things." "I suppose it would." He glanced at her, and in the fading light, his eyes looked almost golden. "I am glad I found you, both of you. This place feels more like a home now than it ever did before." Willa felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the summer evening. She found herself suddenly, acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how she could feel the warmth of his body next to hers, how she could see the stubble on his jaw and the small scar above his left eyebrow. She wondered what it would feel like to touch him, to be held by him, and the thought made her look away quickly, heat rising in her cheeks. By the time they reached the ranch, full dark had fallen. They unloaded the wagon by lamplight, carrying the supplies into the house and the feed into the barn. Willa made a late dinner of the ham they had bought in town, fried potatoes and fresh bread, and they ate together at the table, tired but satisfied with their day's work. As Willa lay in bed that night, listening to Wendy's soft breathing beside her, she found herself thinking about Nathan. About the way he had stood up to Mr. Patterson, the pride in his voice when he talked about his land. About the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious and unexpected. About how safe she felt here, how cared for. She was falling in love with him, she realized. Maybe had been falling in love with him since the moment he crouched in front of her in the dust and offered her water. The realization should have frightened her, but it did not. It felt right, like something that had been inevitable from the moment their paths crossed. The question was, did he feel the same way? The summer days grew longer and hotter. Willa and Wendy fell completely into the rhythm of ranch life, their hands growing calloused, their skin tanning despite the bonnets they wore. The garden flourished under their care, providing fresh vegetables that supplemented their diet of salt meat and beans. The chickens thrived, laying eggs reliably. Even the milk cows seemed happier, producing more milk now that they were being tended to consistently. Nathan taught them to ride properly, spending evenings after the work was done walking them through the basics. Wendy took to it naturally, fearless and eager. Willa was more cautious but determined, and she felt a thrill of accomplishment the first time she cantered across the pasture without Nathan holding the lead rope. "You are a natural," Nathan told her, genuine admiration in his voice. "Few more weeks and you will be riding with me to check the herd." "I would like that," Willa said, and meant it. One evening in late August, a storm rolled in from the west, dark clouds piling up like mountains on the horizon. Nathan hurried to get the animals secured in the barn while Willa and Wendy closed shutters and brought in anything that might blow away. The storm hit with sudden violence, rain sheeting down, lightning turning the world white, thunder shaking the house to its foundations. They huddled inside, the three of them and Scout, who hated thunder and pressed himself against Nathan's legs. Nathan lit lamps against the darkness, and Willa made coffee, and they sat around the table listening to the storm rage outside. "Gets like this sometimes," Nathan said. "Storms out here can be fierce, but the house will hold. It has weathered worse." "Were you here alone during storms like this before?" Wendy asked. "I was. It is different now, having company, better." "You were not lonely?" Willa asked. "Out here by yourself?" Nathan considered this. "Sometimes. But I chose this life. I knew what I was signing up for. After my sister died, after my parents followed her a few years later, I did not have much tying me to civilization. I worked cattle drives for a while, saved up money, and when I had enough, I came out here and bought this land. Built something that was mine. I figured that was enough. Is it? Willa asked softly. Enough. Nathan looked at her and something passed between them, a recognition and understanding. It was, he said, before, but now I am not so sure. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for a stark moment, and Willa saw in his eyes what she had been hoping to see. He felt it too, this pull between them, this connection that had grown from gratitude and proximity into something deeper and more complicated. The storm lasted through the night. Willa lay awake listening to it, feeling Wendy sleeping peacefully beside her, and thought about Nathan on the other side of the wall. What was he thinking? Was he awake too, listening to the rain, thinking about her? The morning dawned clear and scrubbed clean, everything glistening with water. Nathan surveyed the damage, which was minimal, just a section of fence blown down and some shingles torn off the barn roof. He and Willa spent the day repairing the fence while Wendy worked in the garden, pulling up vegetables that had been flattened by the wind. Working beside Nathan, Willa was acutely aware of him in ways she had not been before. The way his muscles moved under his shirt as he lifted posts. The concentration on his face as he measured and cut. The way he patiently explained what he was doing and why, teaching her without making her feel ignorant. At one point, they both reached for the same hammer and their hands touched. Nathan pulled back like he had been burned, and Willa saw color rise in his face. "Sorry," he muttered. "It is all right," Willa said, her own heart racing. They finished the fence in awkward silence, tension crackling between them like residual lightning from the storm. When they walked back to the house for lunch, Nathan cleared his throat. "Willa, I need to talk to you about something." Willa's heart jumped into her throat. "All right. Not here. Tonight after dinner, will you walk with me?" "Yes. Yes, of course." Wendy noticed something was different during lunch, giving Willa questioning looks, but Willa just shook her head slightly. She would tell her sister everything later, after she knew what Nathan wanted to say. The afternoon dragged endlessly. Willa tried to focus on her tasks, washing clothes and mending a tear in one of Nathan's shirts, but her mind kept wandering. What did he want to talk about? Was he going to tell her he had feelings for her? Or was he going to say that they needed to maintain proper boundaries, that they could not let anything inappropriate develop? Dinner was a quiet affair. Even Wendy seemed to sense the tension and kept her chatter to a minimum. When the dishes were cleared and the sun was sinking toward the horizon, Nathan stood. "Would you walk with me?" he asked Willa. "Yes." They left Wendy in the house and walked out onto the prairie, Scout trailing behind them. The evening air was soft and cool, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. They walked in silence for a while, away from the buildings, until they were surrounded by nothing but grass and sky. Finally, Nathan stopped and turned to face her. He took off his hat and turned it in his hands, clearly nervous. "I am not good at this," he said. "Talking about feelings and such. I have spent most of my adult life alone, and I have gotten used to keeping things to myself. But I figure I owe you honesty after everything." "All right," Willa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I found you and your sister in Scottsbluff, I thought I was just doing a good deed, helping someone who needed it. I did not expect, I did not think." He stopped, frustrated, then started again. "You have been here almost 2 months now. In that time, everything has changed. This place feels like a real home now. It feels like it has a purpose beyond just me trying to scratch out a living. And that is because of you. Both of you, but especially you, Willa." Willa's heart was pounding so hard she thought he must be able to hear it. "I find myself thinking about you when I am out with the cattle," Nathan continued. wondering what you are doing, if you are all right, looking forward to coming back at the end of the day because I know you will be there. I notice things I never noticed before, like how you sing sometimes when you are working, or how you always make sure Wendy eats enough, or how you look when the sun hits your hair just right." He met her eyes. "I am falling in love with you, Willa. Maybe have already fallen. And I needed you to know that, even though it complicates everything." Willa felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "It does not complicate anything," she said, "because I feel the same way. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it was just gratitude or proximity, but it is not. It is more than that. It is you, Nathan. The way you are kind without expecting anything in return. The way you work so hard to build something good here. The way you care for everything around you, from the cattle to the chickens to Scout. The way you have made us feel safe and wanted after we thought we had nothing left in the world." Nathan stared at her like he could not quite believe what he was hearing. "You mean that?" "I do. I love you, Nathan Irving. I think I have loved you since the moment you gave me water and told me I was going to be all right." He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. Willa melted against him, feeling his strength, his warmth, his heart beating fast against her cheek. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, the prairie stretching endlessly around them. Then Nathan pulled back just enough to look down at her. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," Willa breathed. "Please, yes." He kissed her gently at first, tentative, like he was afraid she might break. But when Willa responded, pressing closer, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair, the kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and desperate and full of all the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I would have this," he said quietly. "Someone to share all of this with, someone who loves this life the way I do, someone who makes me want to be better, do better." "You are already the best man I have ever known," Willa told him. "Then you have not known very many men," Nathan said with a small laugh. "I have known enough to recognize something good when I see it." They kissed again, slower this time, savoring it. When they finally started walking back toward the house, they walked hand in hand, neither wanting to let go. Wendy took one look at their faces when they entered and broke into a wide grin. "Finally," she said. "I was wondering how long it would take you two to figure out what everyone else could already see." "You knew?" Willa asked. "Of course I knew. You are my sister. I know you better than anyone. And Nathan has been looking at you like you hung the moon since about the 3rd day we were here." Nathan had the grace to look embarrassed, but he did not let go of Willa's hand. "Your sister and I need to talk to you about something," he said to Wendy. "About the future and what that might look like for all of us." They sat around the table, and Nathan explained what he was feeling, what he wanted. He told Wendy that he loved Willa and wanted to marry her if she would have him, but that he understood this was complicated. Wendy was Willa's family, her responsibility. "You are part of this too," Nathan said to Wendy. "This is your home as much as anyone's. If Willa and I marry, you will be my family too, my sister. Nothing about that changes unless you want it to." Wendy's eyes filled with tears. "You mean that?" "You are not going to send me away." "Never," Nathan said firmly. "You have a place here for as long as you want it. Even when you decide you want to strike out on your own, find your own path, you will always have a home to come back to." Wendy looked at Willa, who nodded. "He means it, Wendy. We are a family now, all 3 of us. That is not going to change." Wendy started crying in earnest then, but they were good tears, relief and joy mixed together. Willa moved to hug her sister, and Nathan joined them, his long arms wrapping around both of them, and they stayed like that for a long moment. A new family forged from desperation and kindness and love. Planning a wedding on a remote Nebraska ranch presented certain challenges, but Nathan and Willa were determined to make it happen. They decided to wait until October, when the worst of the summer heat had passed and the fall roundup was finished. That gave them 2 months to prepare, to get the ranch in the best shape possible, and to make sure they could afford the time away from work for a celebration. They rode into Scottsbluff in early September to make arrangements. Willa bought fabric for a dress, plain white cotton that she planned to embroider with wildflowers. They met with the minister, a kindly older man named Reverend Hathaway, who agreed to come out to the ranch to perform the ceremony. Nathan arranged for a few of the ranchers he knew from neighboring properties to come, people who had been friendly to him over the years. It would be a small wedding, simple and intimate, which suited them both just fine. Word got around town, as word always did. Most people were happy for them, offering congratulations and well wishes. But Mr. Patterson, when he heard, had a different reaction. He showed up at the ranch one afternoon in late September, riding up with 2 men who looked like hired muscle. Nathan saw them coming and walked out to meet them, his posture tense. Willa watched from the porch, a knot of worry forming in her stomach. "Irving," Patterson said, not bothering to dismount. "Heard you are getting married." "Word travels fast," Nathan replied, echoing what he had said months ago. "Seems like you are settling in pretty permanently. Thought maybe it was time to have another conversation about selling this place." "I told you before, I am not interested. See, that is where we have a problem." Patterson leaned forward in his saddle, his voice dropping but still loud enough for Willa to hear. "This land should be mine. I need access to that creek and you are in my way. Now I have been patient, made you fair offers, but my patience is running out." "That sounds like a threat," Nathan said, his voice dangerous. "Just a statement of fact. You are one man, Irving, about to take on a wife and her sister. That is a lot of responsibility, a lot of mouths to feed. Things happen out here, accidents. Cattle get sick, fences get cut. Would be a shame if something happened to interfere with your ability to provide for your new family." Nathan took a step forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You listen to me, Patterson. This land is mine, legally bought and paid for. You come onto my property again making threats, and I will go to the law. You touch my cattle, my fences, or anything else, and I will make sure everyone in 3 counties knows what kind of man you really are. You think you can bully me into selling, but you are wrong. Now get off my land." Patterson stared at him for a long moment, calculation in his eyes. Then he smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "You are making a mistake, Irving, but I guess you will find that out soon enough. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. Nathan stood watching until they disappeared from sight, then walked back to the house. Willa met him at the door. "Should we be worried?" she asked. Nathan's jaw was tight. "Maybe. Patterson is used to getting what he wants. He does not take no for an answer easily. But I meant what I said. This land is ours and we are not giving it up. What if he does something, hurts the cattle or tries to drive us off? Then we fight back. We document everything, we go to the law, and we make enough noise that he cannot just brush it aside. Men like Patterson rely on people being too scared or too tired to stand up to them. We are not going to be those people." Willa nodded, though fear still gnawed at her. She knew how hard Nathan had worked for this place, how much it meant to him. The thought of someone trying to take it away made her furious, but it also made her scared. They had already lost so much. She could not bear the thought of losing this too. Over the next few weeks, they kept a careful watch on the property. Nathan checked the cattle more frequently, rode the fence lines looking for signs of tampering. Willa and Wendy stayed closer to the house, always aware of their surroundings, but nothing happened. No sick cattle, no cut fences, no mysterious accidents. Either Patterson had been bluffing, or he was biding his time. As October approached, the weather turned cooler, the oppressive heat of summer giving way to crisp mornings and comfortable afternoons. The leaves on the cottonwoods along the creek turned gold, and the prairie grass faded to brown. It was beautiful in a stark way, the landscape preparing for winter. Willa worked on her dress in every spare moment, her fingers flying over the fabric, embroidering delicate wildflowers around the hem and neckline. Wendy helped her, the two of them sitting together in the evenings while Nathan did paperwork or mended tack, the three of them existing in comfortable silence broken only by occasional conversation. The week before the wedding, the neighbors started arriving with gifts. Mr. and Mrs. Thornton from the ranch to the east brought a set of dishes. The Wilson family from the south brought a quilt Mrs. Wilson had made. Even old Ben Carter, who lived alone on a small holding to the north and rarely spoke to anyone, showed up with a side of smoked venison and a gruff congratulation. "You are well liked," Willa told Nathan after Mr. Carter left. "These people respect you." "They are good people," Nathan replied. "Out here, neighbors are important. We look out for each other. That is how we survive." The day before the wedding, Willa was seized by sudden nerves. She was about to marry a man she had known for barely 3 months, a man she had met when she was literally dying in the street. It was crazy. It was impulsive. It was nothing like the life she had imagined for herself when she left Missouri with her parents all those months ago. But when Nathan came in from checking the cattle and smiled at her, tired and dirty and so obviously happy, all her doubts evaporated. This was right. This man, this place, this life. It was exactly what she was supposed to be doing, having second thoughts. Nathan asked, reading her expression with the ease of someone who had learned to know her well. "No, not at all, just marveling at how strange life is, how one terrible thing led to the most wonderful thing. I marvel at that too, every day." The wedding day dawned clear and cold, frost sparkling on the grass, the sky an endless blue. Willa woke early, nervous excitement buzzing through her veins. Wendy helped her dress, lacing up the white cotton gown they had worked so hard on, pinning up her hair, weaving in sprigs of dried wildflowers they had gathered and pressed. "You look beautiful," Wendy said, tears in her eyes. "Mama and Papa would be so happy for you." "I wish they could be here," Willa said softly. "I wish they could have known Nathan. They would have loved him. How could they not?" The ceremony was held in front of the house, with the prairie stretching endlessly behind them. The neighbors gathered, maybe 20 people in total, dressed in their Sunday best. Reverend Hathaway stood ready with his Bible, and Nathan waited, wearing a new shirt Willa had made him, his hair freshly cut, his face clean-shaven, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Willa walked to him across the grass, Wendy beside her, and took his hands. They were warm and solid and slightly calloused, the hands of a man who worked hard and cared deeply. Reverend Hathaway spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together, about facing whatever came with faith and courage. And then he asked them to make their vows. "I, Nathan Irving, take you, Willa Ramsey, to be my wife," Nathan said, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to love you, care for you, stand beside you in good times and bad. I promise to build a life with you that honors the sacrifices that brought you here and the courage it took for you to stay. I promise to be worthy of the love you have given me." Willa's voice shook as she said her own vows. "I, Willa Ramsey, take you, Nathan Irving, to be my husband. I promise to love you, support you, work beside you to build something lasting and good." I promise to never forget that you saved my life, not just that day in Scottsbluff, but every day since by showing me what it means to be truly cared for. I promise to be the partner you deserve." Reverend Hathaway pronounced them husband and wife, and Nathan kissed her to the applause and cheers of their neighbors. Willa felt joy burst through her like sunlight, warming her from the inside out. She was married. She was Willa Irving now, with a husband and a home and a future. The celebration that followed was simple but joyful. Mrs. Thornton had brought a cake, and there was coffee and cider, and Mr. Wilson played a fiddle while people danced in the yard. Nathan held Willa close as they moved to the music, and she rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, feeling his heart beat against hers. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied. "Good. Because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." As the sun set and their neighbors began to depart, heading back to their own ranches before full dark, Willa stood with Nathan's arm around her and Wendy on her other side, and felt complete in a way she never had before. They had become a family, forged by hardship and kindness and love. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That night, after Wendy had retired to her room, Nathan carried Willa over the threshold of their bedroom like she weighed nothing. He set her down gently and kissed her, and Willa felt desire flood through her, hot and urgent and new. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked, pulling back slightly, always giving her a choice. "I have never been more sure of anything," Willa said, and drew him back to her. They made love slowly, tenderly, Nathan patient with her inexperience, Willa brave in exploring this new intimacy. It was awkward at times and slightly painful, but it was also beautiful and profound and brought them even closer together. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the quilts, Willa's head on Nathan's chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I love you too," Willa replied. "Thank you for choosing me, for choosing us. It was not really a choice. More like destiny. Like you were supposed to be here all along, and I was just waiting for you to arrive. Maybe that is true. Maybe everything that happened, as terrible as it was leading to this moment." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, the beginning of their married life settling over them like a blessing. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Willa's life. As fall turned to winter, they worked together to prepare the ranch for the cold months ahead. They harvested the last of the garden vegetables and stored them in the root cellar. They butchered a steer and smoked the meat. They gathered firewood, stacking it high against the house. They laid in supplies from town, enough to see them through until spring if the snows were bad. Winter on the Nebraska plains was harsh but beautiful. Snow fell in great white blankets, transforming the landscape into something alien and pristine. The cattle huddled together for warmth, and Nathan checked on them daily, making sure they had access to water, breaking the ice on the creek with an axe. Willa and Wendy kept the house warm and bright, cooking hearty meals, mending clothes by lamplight, reading aloud from the few books they owned. At night, Willa and Nathan would lie together in their bed, sharing warmth, talking about their dreams for the future. They wanted to expand the herd, build a proper bunkhouse for hired hands, maybe even eventually build a bigger house. They talked about children, about how many they wanted, about what kind of life they would build for them. "I want them to grow up knowing they are loved," Nathan said, "knowing they have a place in the world that is theirs, knowing they can build something good if they work hard enough." "They will know all of that," Willa promised, "because they will have you as a father." In January, Willa realized she was pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses and was feeling queasy in the mornings, and when she told Nathan, he picked her up and spun her around, joy written all over his face. "We are going to have a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Willa asked, needing to hear him say it. Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am thrilled. I am terrified. I am grateful beyond words. Wendy was equally excited, already planning to be the best aunt any child could ask for. The three of them spent the long winter evenings talking about names, about how they would need to add on to the house, about all the ways their lives were about to change. Spring came slowly to Nebraska, the snow melting in fits and starts, the ground muddy and treacherous. But eventually the grass greened up, the trees budded, and the cattle spread out across the range, grazing on new growth. Nathan worked from dawn to dusk, repairing winter damage, checking the herd for new calves, planning for the year ahead. Willa's belly grew round, and she felt the baby move inside her, little flutters at first, then strong kicks. Nathan would place his hand on her stomach at night and marvel at the life they had created. Sometimes he would talk to the baby, telling it about the ranch, about the life that awaited it, about how loved it already was. In May, Mr. Patterson showed up again, this time alone. Nathan met him in the yard, his posture wary. "What do you want, Patterson?" "Just wanted to check in, see how married life is treating you, see how your growing family is doing." The way he said it, with particular emphasis on growing, sent ice down Willa's spine. He knew she was pregnant. How did he know? "We are doing fine, no thanks to you," Nathan said. "Now state your business or leave." "My business is the same as always. I want this land. And I am running out of patience, Irving. You have a baby on the way now. Things are going to get harder for you, more expensive. Seems like a good time to take a generous offer and relocate somewhere easier, somewhere safer. We are not going anywhere, and if you threaten my family again in any way, I will not go to the law. I will handle you myself. Are we clear?" Patterson's smile faded. "You are making a serious mistake. The only mistake would be letting a bully push me around. Now get off my land." After Patterson left, Nathan was tense and quiet. Willa tried to talk to him, but he insisted he was fine, just tired. But that night, after Wendy had gone to bed, he finally opened up. "I am scared," he admitted. "I know I should not be. I should be strong, confident. But I am scared, Willa. Scared that Patterson will do something to hurt you or the baby. Scared that I cannot protect you. Scared that I have brought you into a situation I cannot control." Willa took his hands. "We face this together. That is what marriage means. We do not have to be strong alone. We lean on each other. And whatever Patterson tries, we will handle it. We have the law on our side, and we have good neighbors who will not stand for him bullying us." You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Maybe not easy, but simple. We stand our ground. We protect what is ours. We do not let fear win. Nathan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "Same way I got lucky to find you. We were in the right place at the right time, and we had the courage to take a chance on each other." June arrived hot and humid. Willa was huge now, uncomfortable and tired, but she kept working, refusing to be treated like an invalid. Wendy tried to take over more of the chores, but Willa insisted on doing her share. She felt better when she was busy, when she was contributing. One evening in late June, Willa was in the garden pulling weeds when she felt a sudden sharp pain low in her back. She straightened up, pressing a hand to her spine, and felt water gush down her legs. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Nathan," she called. "Nathan, the baby is coming." Nathan came running from the barn, Scout on his heels. He took one look at her and his face went pale, but he pushed through the panic and took charge. He got her into the house, got her lying down, sent Wendy galloping off to fetch Mrs. Thornton, who had delivered babies before. The labor was long and hard. Willa had known it would be painful, but she had not been prepared for the intensity of it, the way it consumed her entire being, wave after wave of pain that made her cry out despite herself. Nathan stayed beside her the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring encouragements, "Mrs. Thornton arrived and took over with calm efficiency, directing Nathan and Wendy, checking Willa's progress, reassuring her that everything was normal, that she was doing fine. It was near midnight when the baby finally came, slipping into the world with a thin wail that was the most beautiful sound Willa had ever heard. Mrs. Thornton cleaned the baby quickly and laid it on Willa's chest. "A girl," she announced, "healthy and strong." Willa looked down at her daughter, tiny and perfect, and felt love flood through her so intensely it was almost painful. Nathan leaned over them both, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "She is perfect," he whispered. "You are amazing. You did so well." They named her Sarah, after Nathan's mother. Sarah Irving, born June 28, 1879, on a ranch in the Nebraska plains. She had a shock of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same light brown as her father's. She was perfect. The days that followed were exhausting but joyful. Willa was sore and tired, but every time she held Sarah, every time she fed her or changed her or just watched her sleep, she felt such profound happiness it brought tears to her eyes. Nathan was a devoted father, always eager to hold his daughter, to rock her when she cried, to marvel at her tiny fingers and toes. Wendy was an excellent aunt, helping with everything from laundry to cooking so Willa could rest and recover. The three adults fell into a new rhythm, adjusting to life with a baby, learning on the fly, supporting each other through the challenges. When Sarah was 2 weeks old, the neighbors came by to meet her, bringing gifts and advice and congratulations. Everyone agreed she was the prettiest baby they had ever seen, and Nathan beamed with pride. But even in the midst of all this joy, the threat of Patterson hung over them like a storm cloud. Nathan was hyper-vigilant, always watching, always expecting trouble. And in late July, trouble came. Nathan was out checking the north pasture when he found 6 of his cattle dead, foaming at the mouth, clearly poisoned. He rode back to the house at a gallop, his face grim. "Patterson," he said, "it has to be. No one else would do this. Are you sure?" Willa asked, though she already knew the answer. "Positive. I need to ride into Scottsbluff, talk to the sheriff. This has gone too far." "Should I come with you?" "No, you need to stay here with Sarah, but I want you and Wendy to stay alert. Keep the rifle loaded. If anyone comes around who is not supposed to be here, you shoot first and ask questions later." He kissed her quickly, checked on sleeping Sarah one more time, then rode out. Willa and Wendy spent the day on edge, jumping at every sound, but no one came. The day passed quietly, and Nathan returned at dusk, looking tired but satisfied. "The sheriff is going to investigate," he said. "He is bringing out a deputy tomorrow to look at the cattle, take statements. He said if we can prove Patterson did this, he will arrest him." "Do you think we can prove it?" "I do not know, but we are going to try." The next day, the sheriff and his deputy rode out. They examined the dead cattle, took samples of the foaming substance around their mouths, questioned Nathan about Patterson's threats. They were thorough and professional, and by the time they left, Nathan felt hopeful that justice might be served. 3 days later, the sheriff returned. He had investigated Patterson, searched his property with a warrant. He had found nothing. No poison, no evidence, no proof that Patterson had been anywhere near Nathan's cattle. "I believe you," the sheriff said. "I believe Patterson did this. But believing and proving are 2 different things. Without evidence, I cannot arrest him. I am sorry, Irving." After the sheriff left, Nathan sat at the table with his head in his hands. Willa sat beside him, one hand on his shoulder, Sarah asleep in a cradle nearby. "What do we do now?" Willa asked quietly. "I do not know. We cannot just let him get away with this, but I do not know how to stop him." "Maybe we should sell," Willa said reluctantly. "Take Patterson's offer, find another place to start over." Nathan looked at her sharply. "No, absolutely not. We do not let bullies win. We do not give up what is ours because someone tries to scare us off. That is not the kind of people we are, and it is not the kind of example I want to set for Sarah. But if he keeps escalating, if he hurts someone instead of just cattle, he will not, because we are going to stop him." "How?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up. "I am going to talk to the neighbors, all of them. We are going to form a watch, take turns patrolling each other's properties. Patterson cannot fight all of us, and if we catch him or his men in the act, we will have the proof we need." Over the next week, Nathan rode to every ranch within a day's ride, explained the situation, asked for help. To a man, the ranchers agreed. They were tired of Patterson's intimidation, his attempts to control all the land and water in the area. They were ready to stand together against him. They set up a rotating watch, with different men patrolling the properties at night, looking for signs of tampering or trespassing. Nathan took his turns, riding out after dark, staying alert for anything out of place. Willa hated it, hated him being out there in the dark where anything could happen, but she understood it was necessary. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then, on a moonless night in August, Nathan and Ben Carter, who were patrolling together, spotted 3 men cutting Nathan's fence in the south pasture. They rode up on them fast, rifles drawn. "Drop the wire cutters and put your hands up," Nathan ordered. The 3 men froze. Even in the darkness, Nathan recognized one of them, a man named Jake Sullivan who was known to work for Patterson. The other 2 he did not know, but he would bet money they were Patterson's men too. "You are trespassing on private property and destroying private property," Nathan said. "Give me one good reason why I should not shoot you where you stand." "We were just," Sullivan started. "Save it. Ben, ride to the sheriff. Tell him we caught Patterson's men red-handed. I will keep an eye on these 3 until he gets here." Ben galloped off into the night. Nathan kept his rifle trained on the 3 men who stood with their hands up, looking nervous. They knew they had been caught. They knew what this meant. The sheriff arrived an hour later with 2 deputies. He arrested all 3 men, and under questioning, Sullivan eventually broke. He admitted they had been hired by Patterson to harass Nathan, to poison his cattle, to cut his fences, to make his life miserable until he agreed to sell. He gave a full statement, signed and witnessed. The next morning, the sheriff arrested William Patterson. The trial was held in Scottsbluff 2 months later, and Patterson was found guilty of destruction of property, harassment, and conspiracy. He was fined heavily and sentenced to 6 months in jail. More importantly, the judge issued an order prohibiting Patterson from purchasing any property within 20 miles of Nathan's ranch, effectively ending his attempts to control the area. When Nathan came home from the trial, Willa ran to meet him, Sarah in her arms. He swept them both into a hug, relief and triumph written all over his face. "It is over," he said. "It is finally over. Patterson is going to jail and he cannot bother us anymore." "You did it," Willa said. "You stood up to him, you protected us." "We did it," Nathan corrected. "All of us. The neighbors who helped patrol. You and Wendy who kept things running while I was dealing with all this. We did it together." That night, they celebrated with Wendy, opening a bottle of wine Nathan had been saving for a special occasion. They toasted to justice, to perseverance, to family. And they looked ahead to the future, no longer shadowed by threats and fear. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered, the herd growing, the profits increasing. Nathan hired 2 permanent hands, young men eager to learn ranching, and built the bunkhouse he had always wanted. Willa's garden flourished, and she learned to can and preserve, filling the root cellar with jars of vegetables and fruits that would see them through the winters. Sarah grew into a bright, curious toddler, then a spirited little girl. She followed Nathan around the ranch whenever he would let her, learning about cattle and horses and the land. She adored Wendy, who spoiled her shamelessly. And she was the absolute center of Willa and Nathan's world, the living proof of the love they shared. In 1881, Willa gave birth to their second child, a son they named Thomas after Willa's father. He was quieter than Sarah, more contemplative, but just as beloved. Nathan was thrilled to have a son, someone to pass the ranch on to, though he always insisted both children would inherit equally. In 1883, Wendy met a man, a teacher who had come to Scottsbluff to start a school. His name was Robert Hayes, and he was kind and intelligent and clearly smitten with Wendy from the moment he met her. They courted for 6 months, with Wendy bringing him out to the ranch regularly so Nathan and Willa could get to know him. When Robert finally asked for Wendy's hand, Nathan gave his blessing without hesitation. Wendy and Robert were married in the spring of 1884, in front of the same house where Willa and Nathan had exchanged vows 6 years earlier. Willa cried watching her sister marry, remembering how far they had both come from those desperate days in Scottsbluff when they thought they would die in the dust. Wendy and Robert settled in Scottsbluff, where Robert continued teaching and Wendy helped establish a lending library. They had 3 children of their own over the years, and the 2 families remained close, visiting often, the children growing up together. In 1885, Willa gave birth to twins, 2 more daughters they named Anna and Emma. The house felt full to bursting now, chaotic and loud and wonderfully alive. Nathan added on 2 more rooms, expanding the house to accommodate their growing family. As the children grew, Nathan taught them all about the ranch, how to ride and rope, how to care for the cattle, how to read the weather and the land. Willa taught them to read and write, to cook and sew, to find joy in simple things. Together, they raised children who were confident and capable, who understood the value of hard work and the importance of family. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Nathan took Willa out to the same spot where he had first told her he loved her, that place on the prairie where the grass stretched endlessly, and the sky felt close enough to touch. 10 years, he said, pulling her close. Sometimes it feels like forever, and sometimes it feels like yesterday. Do you remember that day I found you in Scottsbluff? Every detail, Willa said. How could I forget? You saved my life that day. And you saved mine, though you did not know it. I was existing before you came, not living. You gave me a reason to build something bigger than just my own survival. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. I never imagined I could be this happy, Willa confessed. After we lost Mama and Papa, after we were left behind, I thought my life was over. I never dreamed I would find this, a love like ours, a family like ours, a life like ours. We built it together, Nathan said. Every piece of it, and we are not done yet. We have a lot more years ahead of us, a lot more memories to make. I cannot wait, Willa said, and kissed him as the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. They walked back to the house hand in hand, toward the lights spilling from the windows, toward the sound of their children's laughter, toward the life they had built from nothing but desperation and kindness and love. A life that had started with 2 sisters weeping from hunger for 5 days, until a lone cowboy said, "Pack up, you're with me," and changed everything forever. By 1895, the ranch had become one of the most successful in the region. Nathan's reputation as a fair, honest rancher spread, and he was sought out for advice by newer homesteaders. The children were thriving. Sarah, now 16, had developed into a skilled horsewoman who could work cattle as well as any hired hand. Thomas, at 14, showed a head for business and helped Nathan with the ranch accounts. The twins, Anna and Emma, were 10 and already helping their mother with the garden and the housework, though they spent as much time as they could outdoors. Willa looked around at her life with deep satisfaction. The house was warm and comfortable, expanded over the years into something that could truly be called a home. The ranch was prosperous, the herd numbering over 200 head. Their children were healthy and happy. And Nathan, though he had more gray in his hair now and lines around his eyes, was still the man who had crouched before her in the dust and offered her water. Still the man who had taken in 2 starving strangers without hesitation. One evening in the summer of 1895, the whole family sat on the porch watching the sunset. The children were sprawled around in various states of relaxation, tired from a day's work but content. Nathan sat with his arm around Willa, and she leaned against him, feeling his solid presence, his warmth. "Tell us the story again," Anna said. "About how you and Papa met." Willa smiled. The children never tired of hearing it, the story of how their parents had found each other. "Well," she began, "it was August of 1878, and your Aunt Wendy and I had been without food for 5 days. We were sitting in the dust in Scottsbluff, so weak we could barely move, thinking we were going to die. And then we heard hoofbeats. And Papa came," Emma chimed in, having heard this story dozens of times. "And Papa came," Willa agreed. "He stopped and got down off his horse, and the first thing he said was 'Jesus Christ,' because we looked so terrible. Then he asked when we had last eaten, and I showed him 5 fingers because I could barely speak. And then he said, 'Pack up, you're with me,'" Sarah added, grinning. "He did. Just like that. 'Pack up, you're with me,' as if it were the simplest thing in the world, taking in 2 starving orphans. He gave us water and food, and he brought us here to this ranch. And he gave us a home and a family and a life. He saved us." Nathan shifted uncomfortably, as he always did when Willa told this part. "You saved yourselves," he protested. "You worked hard, earned your place here." "You gave us the chance to work hard," Willa said. "Without you, we would have died. It is as simple as that." "And then you fell in love," Thomas said, his voice holding the slightly embarrassed tone teenagers got when their parents were romantic. "We did," Nathan confirmed, looking at Willa with the same love in his eyes that had been there from the beginning. "I fell in love with your mother's strength, her kindness, her determination. She made this house a home. She made my life worth living." "Oh, Papa," Sarah said, half laughing, half crying, "that is so sweet." As the last light faded from the sky and the stars began to emerge, the family sat together, warm and safe and profoundly connected. They were bound not just by blood, but by the story of how they came to be, by the knowledge that their family had been forged from hardship and desperation, and one man's simple act of kindness. Over the years that followed, that kindness rippled outward. When neighbors fell on hard times, Nathan and Willa were the first to offer help, remembering what it felt like to be desperate and alone. When new settlers arrived in the area, lost and overwhelmed, the Irving family welcomed them, offered advice and assistance, helped them find their footing. They understood, better than most, how much difference one person could make by simply choosing to help when it would have been easier to look away. As Nathan and Willa grew older, their children took over more and more of the ranch operations. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son and started her own, spread adjacent to Nathan's land. Thomas took over the day-to-day management of the family ranch, proving himself every bit as capable as his father. The twins both married local men and settled nearby, remaining close to the family. By the early 1900s, Nathan and Willa were grandparents many times over, their house often filled with grandchildren running and playing and filling the air with laughter. They had slowed down, no longer able to work the long hours they once had, but they were content, satisfied with what they had built. On a warm evening in June of 1905, 27 years after they first met, Nathan and Willa sat together on the porch, just the two of them, watching the sun set over the prairie. Nathan's hair was white now, his movements slower, but his hand in Willa's was still warm and strong. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked. "Coming out here with me that day, building this life?" "Never," Willa said without hesitation. "Not for one moment. This is exactly where I was meant to be, with exactly who I was meant to be with." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Nathan Irving." "Right back at you, Willa Irving. You made me a better man. You gave me a family. You turned this ranch from a place I lived into a home I loved." "We did it together," Willa said, echoing words they had spoken many times over the years. "Everything we built together." They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. The cattle lowed softly in the distance. A gentle breeze rustled through the grass. From inside the house came the sound of grandchildren playing, visiting for the week, and Willa smiled at the sound. "I would not change a single thing," she said softly. "Not the hardship that brought us together, not the struggles we faced, not any of it. Because all of it led to this, to us, to the family we created. It was worth every bit of pain to get here." "I love you," Nathan said, as he had said thousands of times over the years. "I love you too," Willa replied, as she always did. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, they remained there together. Two people who had found each other in the most desperate of circumstances and built something beautiful from that desperate beginning. Two sisters had wept from hunger for 5 days, until a lone cowboy said, "Pack up, you're with me." And in those simple words had set in motion a love story that would span decades, that would create a family, that would prove that sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unlikely places. The ranch would continue for generations, passed down through the family, a testament to what Nathan and Willa had built together. And every child born into that family would hear the story of how it all began, of two sisters dying in the street and one man who chose to help, and how that single choice changed everything. It became family legend, a reminder of the power of kindness, the importance of compassion, and the incredible things that can happen when people choose love over indifference. Nathan and Willa lived long lives, surrounded by children and grandchildren who adored them. They died within months of each other in 1912, both in their 60s, both having lived fuller, richer lives than either had ever imagined possible. They were buried side by side on a small hill overlooking the ranch, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names and the dates of their lives. But their true monument was not those stones. It was the thriving ranch, the large extended family, the legacy of kindness and hard work and love they left behind. It was the way their children and grandchildren lived their lives, always ready to help those in need, always remembering that they came from people who understood desperation and chose compassion. The story of Nathan and Willa became the foundation story of the family, told and retold through the years, adapted and embellished, but always containing the essential truth at its core. Two sisters wept from hunger for 5 days, until a lone cowboy said, "Pack up, you're with me." and in doing so saved not just their lives but gave them a future, a family, and a love that would endure for generations. It was a reminder that heroes do not always come in grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Sometimes they come in the simple choice to help when you could just as easily ride past. Sometimes they come in 3 simple words: "You're with me." And sometimes those simple words can change the entire course of a life, can create a legacy that lasts long after the original actors have passed from the stage. That was the story of Nathan Irving and Willa Ramsey, 2 people who found each other in the dust and desperation of the frontier and built something lasting and beautiful. It was a love story, yes, but it was more than that. It was a story about the power of choice, about the impact one person can have on another, about the way compassion can ripple outward through time, affecting people who have not even been born yet. And it all started with a simple act of kindness on a hot August day in 1878, when a lone cowboy stopped his horse, looked at 2 dying girls, and said the words that would change all their lives forever. "Pack up. You're with me." Those words became a family motto, repeated in times of hardship, used to welcome newcomers, spoken as a reminder of where they came from and what they believed. "You're with me" meant you were not alone, that someone would stand beside you, that you had a place and a purpose. It meant family, not just by blood but by choice. It meant home, and that was perhaps the greatest gift Nathan had given Willa that day in Scottsbluff, greater even than the food and water and shelter. He had given her the knowledge that she belonged somewhere, that someone had chosen her, that she was worth saving. He had given her a home, not just a physical place but a feeling, a certainty that she would never be alone and abandoned again. Willa had given Nathan gifts too, though she never thought of them that way. She had given him purpose beyond mere survival, had given him a family to work for, had given him the joy of being loved not for what he could provide but for who he was. She had turned his solitary existence into a life rich with connection and meaning. Together, they had created something that lasted, something that mattered. And that was the real ending of their story. Not the dramatic rescues or the conflicts with villains or the trials overcome, though those were all part of it. The real ending was the quiet satisfaction of lives well lived, of children raised and grandchildren loved, of a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. The ranch remained in the family for over 100 years, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story but never forgetting the beginning, never forgetting how it all started with 2 sisters weeping from hunger and one cowboy who could have ridden past, but chose to stop. And in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, in a time when many people chose to look out only for themselves, that choice to stop, to help, to care made all the difference. It was proof that goodness existed, that heroes were real, that love could conquer even the most desperate circumstances. That was the story Nathan and Willa lived, and it was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down through the generations as a reminder of what really matters in life. Not wealth or status or power, but kindness, compassion, and the choice to help someone when they need it most. And so the story of how 2 sisters wept from hunger for 5 days, until a lone cowboy said, "Pack up. You're with me," became more than just the beginning of a marriage or the founding of a family. It became a testament to the best of what humans could be, a shining example of the way one simple act of kindness can echo through time, creating ripples that spread far beyond what the original actor could ever imagine. That was the legacy Nathan and Willa left behind, and it was the greatest legacy anyone could hope for. They had loved well, lived well, and left the world better than they found it. And in the end, what more could anyone ask for?